did this function yesterday, and we fruitfully learned something about nanomaterials, their types, some applications. Today is the second day, and now I invite Professor Raj to give his talk on nanomaterials, pollutants and remediations. So I hope you will enjoy this talk and learn accordingly. Thank you.
Wait. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today we will continue our journey in nanotechnology and environmental applications of nanotechnology. We'll talk about different subjects today. There's also a tutorial in the afternoon. I'm still not sure what we will do in the tutorial. I will think maybe we will do something interesting. Okay, so the first lecture will be about good things and bad things. We'll start with the bad things. We will talk about air pollution from nanoparticles. In particular, we'll talk about toxicity of nanoparticles, why they can be bad for our health. In particular, we'll talk about a very big environmental problem, which is plastic. There's plastic everywhere, but there's really bad problems with small particles of plastics, particularly microplastics and nanoplastics, and we will discuss this. But then we'll talk about the good things, how nanomaterials can help us, how it can help us, for example, specifically to clean water, which is something very important. Okay, nanoparticles and why they are bad. If you think about it, we are exposed all the time to nanomaterial. In addition to nanomaterials, we are exposed also to other pollutants, like bad things that's in the air. There is exhaust from cars. There is things that get released when there is wind. There are things that are in the water that are very small and can cause health. Sometimes it can be even worse when you have nanoparticle in the air or in the water, which combine with other pollutants, molecules, toxic molecules that's in the air or in the water. And when they are combined together, that can be even worse. Let's see why it is worse. Let's first talk about the air. You know, if you take very small particles, they can float in the air just like dust. And they can go anywhere, including into our body, through our lungs. Do you know what it is? It's called PM2.5. PM2.5 particle matter or particulate matter 2.5. These are particles that have diameter of approximately 2.5 micron. Everybody talk about PM2.5 because they go into our lungs, and then from the lungs they can spread throughout our body and cause damage. So actually, when you see numbers or parameters for air pollution, people usually talk about PM 2.5. There are apps on the phone that can tell you any minute what is the concentration of PM 2.5 in the air. It can give us an idea if it's safe to be outside or not safe to be outside. But if you think about it, look, PM 2.5 compared to nanoparticles, it's huge. It's like a huge ball compared to small ball. So if this is a problem, because this goes into our body and causes problems, then these small nanoparticles are even worse. Because it's very easy for them to go into our lungs and then go into our blood, go into our brains, go into our different organs. That's the big danger about nanoparticles in the air. Actually, nanoparticles in the air can come from car exhaust. They can come from industrial plants. They can come from waste. They can just come from dust if you step on the ground. Actually, in the modern world, there's other sources of nanoparticles in the air. For example, 3D printers. You know, 3D printers are very big industry right now. Sometimes people take 3D printers and put them in their homes. But when you print something using 3D printer, the polymers, plastics that you use for printing can go in the air, fill the room, and this is pollution. This is air pollution. Metallic nanoparticles. These are metallic nanoparticles. They actually be surprising that we can have metallic particles in the air, like aluminum, like titanium, iron, silicon. But all such particles, metallic particles, can come from various sources. For example, from industrial plants. A plant that makes cars, make engine, anything that you can use metal, iron, steel, all these plants can release metallic nanoparticles in the air. And then, these metallic nanoparticles can go and penetrate into the cells of our body. What I'm going to show you in the next few slides is that why these metallic nanoparticles are so bad for you. So let's see the first reason. The first reason why metallic nanoparticles are bad for you is because, first, because they are so small. MMP stands for metallic nanoparticles. Because metallic nanoparticles are so small, they can penetrate very easily through the membrane of the cell. Now, when these metallic nanoparticles enter the cell, it's very bad. In our cells, we don't have metals. We don't have metallic nanoparticles. When they go in, they can do bad things. They can go to different organelles in the cell. There are special compartments in cells that are very important for our biology. For example, the lysosome, the mitochondria. Metallic nanoparticles can go inside these organelles, and then they disrupt their normal function. And then we can have disease. Another thing they can do, which is actually one of the main problems with metallic nanoparticles, they can oxidize. And when you have oxidation of biological molecules, you can have what we call ROS. When you see ROS, which stands for reactive oxidative species, it's very bad. Because ROS can really cause damage in biological processes and can cause various diseases, primarily cancer. So these are nanoparticles in the air. We're going to talk about these ROS and oxidation in a minute. But first, another general survey. Nanoparticles can go to cells. If we look in the bigger picture, nanoparticles can go through the lungs to our brain. And when we have nanoparticles in our brain, it's very bad. It hurts our thinking. It hurts our cognition. Now, how nanoparticles can go to the blood, to the brain? Nanoparticles can go to the brain because they're so small, they can penetrate this thing which is called the blood-brain barrier. Have you heard of the blood-brain barrier? The blood-brain barrier, which sometimes people call the BBB, okay? This is an extremely important membrane that protects the brain from the rest of our body. We don't want anything to go into the brain because it's the most important organ in our body. So, to protect the brain, we have a very strong and tight membrane between the brain and the blood vessels. And this membrane, this layer, prevents anything from going into the brain. Only very small molecules. But because nanoparticles are so small, they can penetrate through the blood-brain barrier and enter the brain. And then this is very bad for us. Another particle or another type of materials that can be very bad for our health is microplastics and nanoplastics. You know, we are all surrounded by plastic. It's everywhere. From our water bottles, we don't have water bottles here, water bottles, our chairs, our shirts, our textile. Everything is plastic. And when we take plastics and we wait 1 month, we wait 1 year, we wait 10 years. Here, we have plastics. Very important because it has water. Thank you. So what happened to the plastic over time? It breaks. And it breaks. And it breaks some more. And eventually, what we have are tiny particles of plastics that are everywhere. People found plastics, for example, in tissues. This is a microscopy image, okay, of a tissue from some animal. And you see, this is the tissue. These things are microplastic particles. So think about it, some tissue in our brain, our heart, our brain, whatever, with small plastics. It's very bad. So this is where the micro and nanoplastics comes from. The bottle is breaking and releasing these very small nanoplastics. And these plastics, these small plastic particles, can actually break even more into molecules which are very bad because they come from oil, from gas. Then they go, for example, to fish. Now, these days, when we take fish from the ocean, even far away from civilization, in the Pacific or in the Indian Ocean, we found that fish has plastics, microplastics in their bodies. This is, for example, shellfish. Okay, something that we can find on the shore. This is a shellfish, and when scientists look very close on the surface of the shellfish, they found these tiny plastic particles. So think about it. Microplastic particles, nanoplastics are everywhere. And when they go into our body, again, they can really disrupt and break important biological processes. This is what polystyrene particles, nanoplastics or nanoparticles, do when they go inside neurons in our brain. You know, polystyrene is maybe the most common plastics. Polystyrene, you can find it in sheets of nylon, sheets of plastics that you use for wrapping things, in packages. Now, what scientists found is that nanoplastics of polystyrene can enter into various neurons, and then what they do two things. One thing is, when these nanoplastics goes into the neurons, they kill the neurons. The neurons die. If the neurons die, it's not good for us. It affects our thinking. It can affect dementia. It can make us sick. Another thing that they found about nanoplastics in neurons is that the neurons do not develop so well. And you know when it's very bad that neurons cannot develop well? In babies. When babies grow and become children, the neurons in the brain need to develop. That's very important for children to be smart. So scientists found that when these nanoplastics go into neurons, the neurons do not mature, do not develop well, affecting cognition of children. Do you know autism? Autistic children. Have you heard the term autism? This is a problem of communication. You know that in the last 30 years, the abundance of autism increased almost 30 times. There is many, many more autistic children in the world, at least in Western countries. And people don't know why. People don't know why there's so many autistic children. Maybe this is the reason. Because there's so many nanoplastics, so much nanoplastic pollution, that children brains do not develop well and they become autistic. So this is the bad things about about nanoparticles in general. Now, what about the good things? I told you that this course will present bad things about nanotechnology in the environment, but also good things about nanotechnology in the environment. And now, after we saw the bad things, let's have some hope. Let's see the good things. So the good things about nanotechnology in the environment is that nanomaterials can be used for cleaning the environment, specifically cleaning pollution from other nanomaterials. What we see here in this slide is a general description of the good things that nanomaterials and nanotechnology can do to the environment. One thing, adsorption. As we're going to see in a minute, nanomaterials can absorb bad molecules from the air or from the water. When they absorb them, they remove them from the environment. Filtration. Nanomaterials can use as filters, very small filters, for bad nanomaterials in water. Oxidation. We're going to see about oxidation, but oxidation can remove also and break bad molecules in water. Then there is also photocatalysis and disinfection. We're going to talk a little bit about each of these good things that nanotechnology can do for us. Let's start with adsorption. You know, in the water, there can be many pollutants, organic pollutants. Organic pollutants can come from the soil, for example, okay? When you use materials for enhancing growth of plants, of crops, or when you have cows and other animals on the ground that can pollute the ground and pollute the water. You can have pollution from industry. You can have pollution from people. So the risk of water pollution is very significant. What nanoparticles can do for us? Nanoparticles are very small, so they have a big surface area, relatively speaking. So we can take nanoparticles, and they can, just like a sponge, when you wash yourself in the shower, nanoparticles can absorb these pollutants from the water, and then, when they absorb, you can take them out of the water, for example, by precipitating them from the water, and then you have clean water. Because all the bad molecules absorb to the nanoparticles and were removed from the water. This is just a nice visual example of this nano cleansers. These nanoparticles here absorbing bad molecules on their surface and then removing them from the water. These are examples of some actual nanoabsorbers that people use. Some of them are even commercial products. So we have here polymeric sheets. These are nano sheets from polymers. We can have carbon nanotubes, zeolites that are special materials with lots of surface area, and metal nanoadsorbers. All these nanomaterials can just absorb pollutants and remove them from water. Nanofiltration. Nanofiltration is another very useful application of nanomaterials for cleaning water. This is just like a filter. For example, when you want to use a filter in the kitchen, you take whatever, water, and you pass it through a filter, and something cleaner comes out on the other side. This is exactly what nanofilters are doing, but they're doing it on the nanoscale. Very small. So what we see here, These are materials that cause very small holes, and through this nanofilter, you can absorb all the bad things in the water, and what comes out on the other side, clean water. Nanofiltration. What you can remove from the water, you can remove molecules, you can remove bacteria, you can remove nanoparticles. Everything that you don't want, you can filter through this nanofiltration. Oxidation. In many cases, you can take nanomaterials which will oxidize pollutants. Now, what is oxidation? For those of you who are not familiar with oxidation reduction, these are very important chemical reactions in which electrons go from one molecule or from one species to another species. So, for example, we have an atom here. When it loses an electron, we say that this atom was oxidized, this atom was reduced. Now, these oxidation reduction reactions are very important for many chemical processes. For us, in this course, oxidation is very important because it can break organic molecules and organic pollutants. This is an example. You see, this is a molecule called magnesium dioxide. It's a very good oxidant. It takes electrons. So when we mix magnesium dioxide with, for example, oxygen, and then there is an organic pollutant, what this molecule is doing, it oxidizes this pollutant, and through this oxidation, it breaks many chemical bonds. So you see, you take this pollutant, very bad, and you break it through oxidation to these small molecules that are okay. Sometimes they're even attractive molecules, like L03 minus. Nitrate is a very important molecule for enrichment of the soil. So what I want to tell you here is that oxidation is a very important chemical process for breaking toxic organic molecules in the water. Another version of this oxidation reaction is through photocatalysis. We're going to talk about photocatalysis a couple other times in this course. When you have photocatalysis, in many cases, you have this reduction-oxidation reaction induced by light. Light is shining on a molecule or atom or a nanoparticle. What the light is doing, light is giving energy to this particle, to the molecule, and the molecule can take this energy and does oxidation. So we see the oxidation here, and again, when you have oxidation, you can break organic pollutants in the water. So what did we learn? We learned that nanoparticles can be a health hazard because of their size. We learn that nanoparticles can accumulate in different organs in our body, in the lung, in the brain. We talked about why metal nanoparticles are bad for us, specifically because of the oxidation reactions of metals. But we also talked about nanomaterials can help us to remediate pollution. How we do that, how nanomaterials do that, they can use as nanoadsorbents. They can absorb molecules and pollutants in water. They can use as filter. We can have nanofiltration through cleaning the water through absorbing bad species, just like any other filters. They can use for pollutant oxidation. We can oxidize the pollutant through redox reaction, through reduction oxidation reaction that can happen in metal nanoparticles or through photocatalytic reactions, taking the light and doing reduction and oxidation. Questions? Okay. So we will take, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Sir, we did a great lecture. You have really covered. And it's a common problem. Common people, like microplastics.
That's right.
So my question is that, so what's the process to have this microplastics? So because of the degradation behavior of the plastics, how we get it?
Okay. Microplastics are what we get when plastic over time breaks. It degrades because the bonds in the plastics, in the polymers, are not very, very strong. So over time, sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes years, the plastics just breaks. And then from big plastics, you have small plastics. And from small pieces of plastics, you will get small microplastics. And then from a small microplastics, you can get nanoplastics.
So if we get plastic which is not degradable at all,
Okay.
polyethylene, so is there chances to get microplastics?
To get less microplastic. You mean if it's non-degradable?
Not degradable at all.
That's actually a good point. Because what we want, we're always talking about biodegradable plastics, which are very good. But you're right that if you don't take biodegradable, you will get less breakage of the plastics. But the generation of microplastics is mostly through mechanical forces, through breaking by pulling, by the wind, by the water. So even if you take non-biodegradable plastics, still you will get microplastics and nanoplastics just from mechanical forces, like breaking with your hands or by cars or whatever.
Like this plastic.
Yeah.
Water made up of PET.
PET, poly, yeah.
And the ester.
Yes,
Because of the ester one, that's the reason it is degraded.
that's right.
So can we make such total of polyethylene to save the environment?
To what?
To save the environment?
Well, maybe it will be better, but any plastics eventually will break into small pieces mechanically. And when you have small pieces, like you get microplastics and nanoplastics, and they can go into your body and they can cause damage. So, yeah.
Yeah, your lecture indeed is excellent. I like the notes that you have covered. It's not only for the chemists, but also for the common
Yeah. So it's good or bad?
How they, because everything, what we are getting from the market, household items, we are getting, we are unaware.
Yes.
How much microplastic we are.
Absolutely.
So how to educate common people regarding this problem?
Okay. Very good question. How can we make changes in our life to help us with microplastics? So one thing you can do, first of all, try to minimize consumption of plastics. That's the one thing that's important. Let's not make so many bottles. The other thing is use, for example, for water, in Europe, for example, they use a metal bottles, multi-use containers for water. So then if you finish this bottle, you don't go and buy a new bottle, which might be bad, but you fill a metal container, and then you use it 100 times or 1,000 times. That's what you can do, for example. Another thing is, indeed, use biodegradable plastics. And biodegradable plastic, at least you can... The big problem, for example, with this is that when we finish using it and we throw it, it goes to a waste dump, or you find it on the side of the road, and then it's breaking slowly, and you get microplastics. So at least you're right. If you take biodegradable or degradable polymers or degradable plastics, then at least you don't get these accumulation of plastic waste and plastic trash.
It's very interesting. We can keep on discussing on these topics. The last question I take.
Sure, take your time.
Just how to detect microplastics. It's a very easy device.
The question was, for those of you who didn't hear, it's a very good question. How do you detect microplastics? Actually now, there's no easy way to detect microplastic. You can detect microplastics maybe in your lab, but it's not so useful. What I will describe in, I think, lecture number 8 or 9, when I talk about nanosensors for the environment, I will talk about the technology that we developed in our lab for detection of microplastics and nanoplastics in the air. So wait, be patient until Thursday, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you about very interesting technology for detecting nanoplastics in the air. Yes? Yes.
Then, as the consequence of renewable energy sources in terms of, let's say, photocatalysis, the moment it can be commercialized or making it in a big level, then what do you comment, like whether the microplastic is going to be more concentrated or particular?
The question was about, I'm repeating your question because you're sitting in the front, maybe they don't hear. If there will be more microplastics when you have renewable energy application. I hope this was the question.
So it will be more concentrated as the consequences of one hand having the renewable energy and the other hand
Yes.
more concentrated.
Okay. So I'm actually not sure if there will be more renewable energy devices. I'm not sure if there will be more plastics in the water.
No, my point is that just consider like in a particular dimension there is a constant amount of microplastic. But if the device is making photocatalysis
Yeah.
of water splitting, then it keeps concentrated
Yes.
more concentrated.
In small places. That's certainly possible. That's why if you study chemistry, you're going to have good jobs. Because there should be ways, we should develop new ways to solve this problem. You're right, there will be maybe good things about energy, but bad things about pollution of microplastics, more concentrated in the area of the energy applications. We will have to find a solution. Sure.
So if we compare between the microplastic and PFAS material, because PFAS material is one of the unavoidable things which is used for the device fabrication and microplastic.
Sure.
So how do you take both in two hands and having the
Okay. So the question was about microplastics and PFAS. PFAS are what people called forever chemicals. These are molecules of polymer that do not break. They can stay in the water and in the soil forever. That's why they're very, very dangerous. Now, there's actually not a connection between the two things, because PFAS are molecules, and microplastics and nanoplastics are like aggregates of lots of plastics together. In both cases, we need to find ways to break these molecules, and that's how you can clean the water. But with PFAS, still it's very difficult to break the bonds. These are very stable molecules, and that's the problem about them. Because they're so stable, they don't break. So that's why you cannot recycle them. So there's many problems. There's many environmental problems. Our job, your job, is to find solution. More questions?
Any questions from students side? Yeah, please. Go ahead.
student any question?
Yeah.
In recent years, there was a material that is hydrolysis sequences, which eat plastics quickly. Hydrolysis sequences which eat plastic. So, is there any chance that the microplastic can be eaten that we can develop in?
This is a very good point. There are actually now bacteria, for example, that can eat plastic, that they can hydrolyze PET in these bottles. Still, it's not so easy. You know, it takes time because there's bacteria, they cannot just sit here and eat the plastic. It will take them 1,000 years. But there are people that are working on development of special bacteria. Yeah. I'm sorry? Of course. It's very expensive. And bacteria are very... Yeah, you're right. But think of... Yeah.
So, we can culture in the lab also. Is that available?
That's wonderful. But think about it. You have every day millions of bottles everywhere. So it's not so efficient. If you culture some bacteria, to get rid of all these bottles, you need millions of agar plates. So this, what you do is very true. You can really culture bacteria. You can grow bacteria that eat plastic. But the secret will be to make it commercial, to make it cheap, to make it very useful. This is the challenge.
Only that India, there are some reports of insects, but they are only research level.
Oh, really?
So are saying,
Interesting.
yeah, that's only that part. Imagination is more than reality.
Well, everything starts from imagination. The good ideas start from imagination.
Lots of work is going on embedded enzymes.
Exactly. Actually, the bacteria that break the PT, that hydrolyze the PT, they use enzymes. And some people, they take enzymes and they use them for breaking plastic. But enzymes are even more problematic because enzymes are biological molecules. They're very sensitive and they're even more expensive. But there are many ideas, as you see. We need to get rid of the microplastics and the nanoplastics. And there's many ways to do that. Okay, so we will take 10 minutes break.
Yes, sir.
Let's take 10-minute break and continue for the next lecture.